What's going on, world? It's your man, Mr. Mac.
And I'm Crystal Levin.
This is the M+M+M show, aka the show, coming to you live and direct with a homie who is hands down responsible for this show in its current form. He is one of the dudes I go back with like fat laces on shell toe Adidas, and that really, really means something when you know this dude's history. He's a father, he's a son, he's a nephew, he's a friend, he's a homie, he's goals. And now he's here. Homeboy, could you please state your name so people know that I'm not lying about you?
Yo, what up, man? It's Chris Classic. Good to see you.
Oh, God. No, so seriously, we have told this story before. I think mostly off of the air is how you put us together. Actually, for some girl group that Mecca was working on. And then I was a little busy bee, a little busy mofo. And he was like, nah. And so when this came up, he was like, okay, she can do this one. She can do this part.
Uh-huh.
I filled in. I think I filled in for somebody else, and then the rest is
No. It was your slot. It was your slot. I didn't have anybody, and I asked Chris, "Do you know a talented white lady?"
No. I filled in the slot on the podcast.
Oh well, yeah, but that's neither here nor there. I still stick to my exact same representation of it. It was always yours. You just didn't know it yet. It was for you.
I'll take that. Well, anyway, thank you, Chris.
Oh, thank you.
We get to be a part of the urban legend that is Chris Classic. And I don't know if people understand that. This dude is a living urban legend. I know it sounds like I'm putting a lot on it, but when you look it up, he's done a lot and is still currently doing a lot. Chris.
And it's more than the arts. It's so many things now. Like you're adding into it. It was initially through music, to my understanding. It was initially, the animated films, your own music, that type of stuff. And then it's taken on a whole other realm of things. Like I have your products in my house.
Right. That's amazing.
So keep going. I want you to tell the story a little bit more. What makes you an urban legend? If you had to explain what Mecca means.
What Mecca means is that in hip hop culture, it is not typical to take life cues from the artist that you like. And because we don't always have the best or haven't had the best examples of father figures and who are individuals that were very relatable in real life, as I started to share my life and my transitions on social media, people begin to tap into that and say, you know what, that's kind of like what I'm dealing with, or I like the way he handled that or approached that, and I think I can do the same thing because he's not judging me or preaching to me, telling me that's how you gotta live. You know,
it started with your parenting and your cooperative separate, I guess co-parenting. I was like
co-parenting.
Yeah, I couldn't think of the term. Started with that, and then also unabashedly, unapologetically being so into your woman. Like, hi, Rai.
Right.
Like that was a big thing. I mean, I watched it evolve, and now we don't see much of her because she's a private lady.
Yeah.
But it was so beautiful to watch.
It's also about, like Max said, I was in the streets of New York, and I was extremely social and working on my social equity and generated a lot of social equity in New York that has allowed me to understand the transition of what that means as you get older. It doesn't mean that you have to go out any less. There's no, glorification of I stay home, I'm not out in the streets. That's nothing to glorify, especially if you're an entrepreneur. You need to be out there and you need to network,
Boots on the ground. In different ways.
The difference is to really like take self-inventory of your purpose of being out there.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I realized that when I moved to Atlanta, I realized like I was mad at Atlanta because there was no place for me to go at 2 a.m. But then I realized that the reason why I innately wanted somewhere to go at 2 a.m. was because I wanted an opportunity to see more women, right? But now that I was in Atlanta and, was dating my wife at the time, that was the underlying reason why at 2 a.m. I still desired to be somewhere. You know what I'm saying? So taking that self-inventory allowed me to say, okay, well, I do like going out. I do need to meet people. This is a new city for me. I do have products that people need to try, and the best they can do is smell me wearing my own fragrances. And I love bringing people together. So I started doing events in Atlanta. Up until the COVID, they were very successful.
Does Atlanta, I don't know, I really have not spent much time in Atlanta. Are there hours, I mean, outside of COVID, are there hours similar, or they stop early? They stop early.
They stop around 2 and maybe 3. There are after hours places that I have not explored, and I don't think I will, because they're not like New York after hours that are typically heavy industry. They're more so just young people who don't feel like going home at 2 a.m., which is understandable.
Well, that's why we stay till 4, because if you don't feel like going home at 4 or 5, then I think it's a drug problem.
or you like diners.
Right. There's that.
Or there's somebody at home you're trying to avoid.
Yeah,
Ooh.
that too.
Yeah.
That too.
Yo, Juju, your son is like bigger than you. Like, he's a big boy now. He's grown.
He's almost my height. He's 16, and you know, he's going to 11th grade, and it's a hard time to be a teenager.
Yeah.
You know, I realized this transition of moving down here, which was something that I wanted, but it was his decision. So that's why he came a year after I moved. It's been rough, you know, and so I'm just monitoring to make sure that I'm doing the due diligence as a parent to kind of like keep on him as far as his mental health and how he's handling this new environment, new city, you know, new mom, new brother, new sister,
and the current world.
And the current world, which is stay at home and inside. And
that's not even a transition just for him. That's a global transition. Everybody's used to what it's like. The fact that Chris, I think one of the things is that I'm interested in is how you're managing to. What are you doing? What devices are you implementing to keep the family unit together with all this new stuff happening? Plus, stay on top of your entrepreneurial, you know, pursuits and keep your business going. Like you got to walk.
Putting the whole family to work. You're just making the whole family work at home. Not
to mention, we didn't even touch the whole racism thing yet, but like, you know, just trying to get people to buy black, trying to get people interested in your business and keep your family structure in a new city, in a new era. I'm very interested in how a New York hustler is pulling that off in Atlanta.
Well, it's all one and the same for me personally. That is not the typical case for just everybody. But for me, you know, they say that when a man may enter a conference room, right, and maybe he's pitching or, you know, a big deal is about to happen and you've never met him before. You know, they say that if you look at that man and he has a wedding ring on, it sort of symbolizes that there's some stability somewhere, right?
I've heard that.
And that's not, you know, a knock to someone who isn't, but that's just how business people tend to think. They look at, well, what is this person's flight risk? If I decide to wire this fool $5 million, is my money gone, right?
Does anybody see him worth a commitment? Also?
Right. Yeah, and I think what happens, you know, in my case is that as we are all feeling the effect of, you know, staying in place, people are really starting to appreciate family and seeing families function in a very real way. And, you know, as much as I like to share, I try my best not to do anything or share anything that's posed or come on guys, we're gonna do this TikTok. I mean, like it's very
Look how coordinated
real.
We are.
Yeah. You know, and there's no knock to that, but it's just like that's not us, so it doesn't make sense for us to start doing anything like that. I think people are seeing the little things like going outside and mowing the lawn, or spending time outside, or, you know, if Rye wants to, you know, work out and she wants to mow the lawn so that she can, you know, exercise, then it's like, okay, well, I got to deal with the funeral procession that happens outside of dudes driving past, slowing down, right? So it's just like those little things.
Oh, she's doing a show today.
Exactly. And then they turn around in the cul-de-sac down the street. But it's more about sharing the truth. You know, having a fragrance brand in a time like this where people aren't going out as much. I had to quickly transition to do something else that people would like, and I knew that they wanted to smell good, and they liked the fragrance, but they needed something for home. So I created a room spray, or what I call a personal space spray. And, you know, I made it extremely affordable. And that was something that sustained me, especially during March and April, where people had no problem. You know what? They didn't want to go and spend money on, you know, ridiculous luxuries, but $19 or $24 was something that they could afford. And they had no problem saying, you know what, I like this fragrance. I want the room spray. I want my house to smell like I smell. And so that was really, really helpful for those first 2 months. And then it just kind of grew from there. People who purchased that, it became a segue into them, you know, buying some of my other products. So
I was going to ask about the shirts too, because you had the shirts going on before the COVID thing. And then I said before COVID, obviously race issues have been, you know, ongoing in this country, but the way that they picked up recently, some of your Black Fatherhood, the Rolling Stones, those type of t-shirts, my Black wife makes me smile, my Black husband, you know, those type of things, I think became just that much more relevant, I think, during this time. So
I think people understood that they were reasons to celebrate, and it wasn't a brag. Like, it wasn't a brag in the conceited way. It was a happy brag. I'm proud of this relationship that I have. I'm proud that, you know, my husband is Black, or I'm proud that my wife is Black, or whatever it is. They make me happy, right? And that, you know, that was a collaboration with Black Men Smile, which is an initiative that is born literally from the notion of sharing imagery that show Black men smiling. Because it's something that, you know, in this country, and I guess globally, we have this, you know, kind of stereotype that we're angry all the time, and rightfully so. We kind of have a lot of reasons to be, but this is just to provide just a different narrative, that Black Men Smile. And you know, the brother lives literally 7 minutes away, and we've formed this brotherhood and camaraderie that I thought these shirts speak to. So it's been real fun.
I was going to comment, I'm not sure if it's the right time, but the smile thing, I had to explain to some foreign friends certain terms, certain experiences that I haven't lived, clearly, as a white woman, light-skinned woman, but explaining about the term coon, for example, and the marionette shows, and all the imagery that, like, people have dragged up through because of all this. We're like, oh, this is not new experience. So basically, Black Men Smiling as a way to, like, make white people feel comfortable versus no, we really do have our own joy, we have our own positivity, like, you know what I mean? The reasons for it actually matter just as much as the reality of smiling or of being a friendly person. It's not to make white people comfortable, it's legitimately our joy.
And it's owning the reason for the smile. You know, similar to
my Black husband, my Black children, Black family, etc.
And
what's the march with the sons, the fathers and sons?
So that wasn't just sons, that was all children. So my boy Sean from out on the island. He created the Dad Gang, and he created the Dad Gang, I want to say in 2014. And I remember he told me he wanted to create it. He was the first. He gave me the first T-shirt, and he came to interview me as I was picking Juju up from school, and walked from Juju school to the train station with me. And that was his first interview. And from there, he kept pursuing, he kept figuring out ways to include Black fathers and to champion us and to highlight us. And he grew his platform tremendously. And he created this thing called Strolling with the Homies, which is a collection of Black fathers who have stroller-aged children, and they get together and they walk. You know, it isn't necessarily like an exercise thing. It isn't that they're walking and, you know, marching or anything.
Or protest.
However, they did join a Black Lives Matter protest in DC this past Father's Day. But the previous Father's Days, they did one here in Atlanta, and then in Prospect Park. And it was great at, you know, just getting those brothers together. Some of them have created like their own little chapters of the Dad Gang, and you know, have their own initiative. So it's a growing work in progress.
Is it nuts to you that you become such a mascot for so many of these movements? Like they
come back to you. Yeah.
You're able to stand in so many of these different circles, from like a Dad Gang to even a political standpoint, to a musical standpoint, to now an entrepreneurial standpoint, to a activist standpoint. Like everybody wants a Chris Classic in the mix, this cool dad who's doing all these things. Is that lost on you? Because I see it pretty clear. I know a lot of dudes who would love to do it the way you do it and are aspiring to do it the way you do it. And no, not shitting on them, but it's a fact.
Yeah. I think that we all have this. So one of my indirect mentors is a guy named Jesse Itzler. And Jesse Itzler, white guy from New York, super hip hop. Mm-hmm. In fact, he funny note about him, he's the one who remember the Knicks had that Go New York theme, mm-hmm. in like, I don't know what year it was, but that was him. And he was an artist. Wow. I mean, he ended up like managing a bunch of people, had his own record label, went on to create Marquee Jets, and then owned Zyko Water and sold it. And then he moved here to Atlanta.
Of course he did.
His wife owns Spanx.
Of course she does.
Yes. And he is an endurance, like he is a I guess they call an extreme marathonist. So he'll run like marathons that are 100 miles long. And in one of his books, he spoke about the fact that we don't push ourselves as humans to the extent that we can. Like, you know, as he was training to do these things, he had a Navy SEAL live with him for 30 days. And, you know, he basically had to push himself to a place that was beyond comfort. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I think that we all have these different layers and people that are a part of us. Mm-hmm. And when someone has, in a positive way, when they have multiple personalities, right? And they're able to kind of like be different people for different folks. Sometimes that becomes a way of life. And I think for me, what keeps me creative, what keeps me happy, what holds me accountable so that I'm not doing anything stupid out in the street is knowing that everything that I think of that is important to me, I know that there's someone who's doing something with that initiative, and I gravitate towards them or they gravitate towards me. I think that we all want to be creative. We all want to have cute kids if we want children. We all want to, you know, have a company of our own that we can run and it, you know, generate income and it's fun. So at the same time, we also may want to have generational wealth, which I'm not at that point that I've achieved that yet, right? Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like, I understand who I am and I understand my purpose. And because of that, I don't like toot my own horn. You know, I try to just like be who I am, not take no shorts, but then not like, you know, emotionally flexing. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I think that's what keeps people like, I rock with him. You know what I'm saying? So at this point, I just think that it's my purpose to be involved in all of these different things. And, you know, if something amazing comes out of it for someone else, I chalk that up to being a part of my legacy. And I just hope that they mention it one day. Well, yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's really where I'm at.
That's where we are now. I think one of the main reasons so many people want you as a mascot for so many of these different things is because of what we talked about in the beginning. We didn't have a lot of examples of what hip hop specifically looked like grown up. We know what rock looks like grown up. Yeah, we know what rock stars look like when they grow up. We know what that life is looking like. But when it came to being hip hop, and it came to being cool and sexy and dangerous and tattooed and your hair all kind of piercings, we never got a chance to see what that looked like when it evolved. And I think one of the main reasons we're gravitating to you is because you're showing that off, which brings me around to your music. I don't know if people understand how nice you are with bars, and the fact that your wife domesticated you when you weren't looking hasn't done anything. Yeah, like he looked one way and next to you, bang, gotcha. And he was so happy to be here, he just stuck around. He loves it there. But I don't think people get, like, your music didn't diminish, your cool factor didn't diminish. And this is me talking, and I'm, you know, my man, so I'm just talking. But
appreciate you.
I could lie, but I'd be lying. None of these diminished about my friend as I watched this evolution happen. And if I'm keeping it a buck, it made me less apprehensive to make these transitions that I wanted to make, but I wasn't sure what it would look like. I didn't know what I'd have to give up in order to be this next guy that was kind of calling me. And now that I've realized that giving up was the wrong word. Like, I prioritize a little different. Like you said, being out the house used to be for a different reason. We're not looking for girls anymore. So now I don't really want to go to some of these places I'm being invited to. Or when I get there, I tend to leave earlier because I'm not.
Like, why am I actually here?
Yeah, like what? My wife, my lady cooks great at the crib, so I don't really want to buy food here. And I just spend a bunch of bread on groceries. So, like, not really sure what I'm doing here at this point. I've seen everybody. Everybody's great. We chopped it up. We laughed. We had jokes.
Right.
I had a thought, and that was that we used to, I mean, I'm tired of explaining myself sometimes. Like, meeting new people, there's the idea that small minds talk about people, average minds talk about events, larger or deeper minds talk about ideas, right? So when I'm in a loud place, a lot of times you basically say hi and like maybe a half hug, or like you greet 50 people, but did you discuss anything? Or did you say you look great? And that might be true, and it might feel good. It's a little ego boost here and there.
Right.
You dance a little. I like to dance. But what did we accomplish? Did any of us grow? I don't feel satisfied until I've had a deeper conversation oftentimes. And so when I'm out, I like to people watch. That's enough. But lately, I mean, even before the COVID stuff, hookah bars or places that are a little bit more seated or a little bit more intimate. And I'm not old. I mean, I'm early 30s, mid 30s. But I started being more interested in deep conversations about actual things. And lucky Juju and the young generation, I think lucky and unlucky are difficult.
Yeah.
They're growing up in a time sort of like the 60s when real, like, caring about stuff matters. Caring about real subjects matters. I think my generation was it was cool to not care. We voted for Obama, but it was kind of cool to be unaware of dumb politics, something, you know?
Not caring was definitely the rebellion, right? And I think that the thing that this generation, my children's generation, and even I feel like I have two generations of children. Julian is 16. His world is vastly different from Zuri, who's, a year and a few months. So I'm going to need my older children to help me, when she's 12. You know what I'm saying? When she's 12, I don't know if I'm going to be as in tune with what's really rocking heavy. I may be aware, but it may not be my first thought. Right. And, I think technology gives children this amazing advantage that none of us really had. And even if you choose to rebel by being unaware of the political landscape, there's so many other things that technology gives you access to. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like, bro, I had encyclopedias as a kid. You know what I'm saying? Like real life, encyclopedias that cost my grandparents like $600-700. You know what I'm saying? And that was supposed to be my end all be all reference. I could look up anything.
That was the
internet.
What I mean? That was
the internet.
Card catalogs at libraries, those stuff.
For sure. And the fact that you can look up something in your hand, or at this point you can say it and receive an answer, which I found out happens so easily because having a daughter named Zuri and phones listening for Siri, they tend to pick up a lot of the things that I'm saying to her.
Siri, what are you eating?
Yeah.
Siri, I am not eating.
Exactly.
That's
so, I think the kids today have this tremendous ability to be who they want to be. And so getting back to your point about music, the reason why I'm not like concerned about everyone knowing my hip hop pedigree or the strength of my skill set as an MC writer specifically, is because I think that the time will tell, right? So like, if they say hip hop was created in 78, then hip hop is 42 years old, right? So if hip hop is 42 years old, that means that if it was a fad, if it was the most amazing thing that happened for a 15 or 16-year-old then, that person is almost 60 years old. And that person still loves hip hop at its core. They are just a little confused at the cadence of hip hop currently. So I'm not worried about me, and everyone knowing what type of music I create. I think that I just have to keep creating it, and then we're going to be able to have this celebration of music properly categorized by standard,
which is big. Categories are big. I know people don't much like titles, but titles separate the boys from the men. Like we need to know what we're doing here. There's levels for a reason, and we don't just have a white belt and a black belt in the same place at the same time because everybody should be equal. No, a black belt. There's black belts and then there's coral belts. And if you've never seen a coral belt, you have no idea how ill they are until a bunch of them walk in the room and the black belts all of a sudden start backing up.
Right.
titles, levels, trap, grown man hip hop, which is what I think you make.
Mm-hmm.
I think these aesthetics are necessary. I also think that they're equally entertaining depending on where you are in life.
Yeah, they all have their purpose. I don't believe that anybody, I don't care if you got a YFN or an NBA, all sorts of surnames in front of your name. I don't care if you a Lil this, a Young that, or whatever. You have the right to make whatever type of music that you feel. Mm-hmm. What would be better for the entire culture of hip hop and for you specifically as an artist who wants to be able to maintain a certain lifestyle is if you made sure that your art, no matter if it was about the rawness of the street, had a merit that didn't make it such a disposable turnaround type of thing,
and
right?
Easily replaceable. We talk about that a lot of times, like people or labels won't invest in a real deep, thought-provoking part, because then if they walk away, they actually brought value to the whatever. But if there's the Lils, I'm not making fun of them, but easily replaceable or simplistic patterns or complete copies of each other. They're little carbon copies, even if they're saying what they mean, because a lot of people mean the same thing. They're dealing with similar things, so that their message isn't irrelevant. It's just that it's so easily replicated that it's not, it doesn't hold value for a label, for a consumer. Not that I'm not dissing them, but I can't remember half their names because they didn't stand out as different from each other to me.
No, I'm dissing them. I'm dissing them. I'll do it. I'm dissing them. I'm dissing them. I'm dissing them 100%. If you came into this thing with no creative drive and no real concern about what you were giving to the culture, then I'm dissing you. I think you deserve to be dissed. I'm not appreciative that you came over here for a money grab when there are those of us who really value this thing that we're a part of. And we were there when we weren't there when the foundations were laid. But here we are trying to add on, and you being here strictly using hip hop as a hustle. No, I don't appreciate that. So I'll be one of the first ones to diss the shit out of you. That can be me all day. I'll totally do that. I got it. Don't worry.
I'm also a linguist. I prefer when people rhyme words with different words. If you rhyme broccoli with broccoli, are you rhyming? Are you?
Right. Well, here's the thing. I kind of liken it to food.
So do I.
And sometimes well, maybe not so much anymore, but sometimes you want McDonald's fries, right? And McDonald's fries serve their purpose. McDonald's fries is not a 5-course meal. And then sometimes you have the in-betweens. You have a diner, that kind of gives you all of the comfort food you want. It might have some nice scenery. You might be able to get some fries there. You might also be able to get amazing homemade chicken soup from this, the sous chef in the back, right? So I feel like, what happens is people try to make McDonald's. People try to make their own little fast food joints, and they don't last. I don't think it's my place to tell them they can't try. I just know that it's become the trend to just try to get in it to become the 5-star spot, and you end up settling for being McDonald's. You know what I'm saying? And so I just, I don't like knocking other artists if they're genuinely artists and that's what they're choosing to make. My gripe is with the people who have no plan or aspiration to have a career in music and are just sullying the brand of hip hop by making such a disposable, irresponsible cart. Okay. It's a dirty halal cart that they're
I had an argument with somebody about what's legitimate, for example, legitimate photographer. And he really said that, like, you can't be an you can't be a professional photographer if you shoot on an iPhone. And then I said, well, at some point, digital was that. If you didn't shoot on real film, people said you're copping out. You're not doing the real thing. And I said, unfortunately, but legitimately, in reality, if you get paid to do a thing, you are in that profession. You don't have to say that they're the best or the most legitimate in your eyes, or you know, quality. But if you get paid to model things, even if no one in this room thinks you're attractive or aspirational, if you get paid to model, you are a professional model.
Right. Right.
If you get paid to rap, or if you get paid to perform, you are a performer, an artist. I'm using these air quotes, like,
no.
That's who you are inside versus what you get paid to do. You're a professional artist if you get on these stages and get paid to do it. But it doesn't take quality. It's hard to tell at that point.
That's why there are levels. That's why there are levels. Like when, as far as Chris, the food analogy, classic rather, the food analogy. I use that same analogy all the time. I even quote McDonald's. But my thing, just when I'm talking to the young boys, as far as my little mans and them, when we start talking about hip hop, I remind them of a couple of things. Number one, when I was a kid, when I was your age, McDonald's was everything. It was a reward if I did good in school. My mother would say, "Hey, we'll go to McDonald's if you get an A." I got an A. We went to McDonald's. I was super happy. You get a little older, diners become it. You don't really want to run up at McDonald's so much anymore. Now, you may still go in there for some fries or a shake or some kind of comfort food that you really dug, but that's not really a thing anymore because your tastes have evolved. And now, as a grown man, I went to Burger and Lobster yesterday because they opened the door for takeout. You know, Tavern on the Green is someplace that the Russian Tea Room, like they're Peter Luger's. I'm hitting these kind of spots now, and this is my treat for myself now. Because there are levels. Now, McDonald's will always outsell all of the places I just mentioned. Every day, all day. McDonald's will have way more customers, be way more accessible, pop up in way more cities, never have a wait longer than the line in front of you, because that's McDonald's. My sense of quality is higher, and it doesn't go back to my taste that I had when I was a kid. I don't level down. I only level up. So if you're impressed with McDonald's, I'm not knocking you, because I'll still go in there and get a flurry or something. I'm not knocking your taste for McDonald's.
That machine is always broken.
Then there's that. Just recognize that while you enjoy this and this is a treat for you, it's kind of not even the bare minimum anymore for me. I'm up here now. And you need to come. My opinion is you can come up, but I'm not going down.
Yeah.
So you have to figure that out. I'm not going to dish you for what you like ever, because I remember when I liked that kind of stuff. But those days are over because I've evolved in my taste. So
I think that there needs to be just one last thing about that. I think that there needs to be a literal genre classification restructuring with the Recording Academy. It's something that I want to present to the Recording Academy. I think that you have Americana, you have bluegrass, you have rock and roll, you have country. You have all of these classifications of music for mainstream white America based on regions and locations. And then the only distinction when it comes to music that is typically made by Black artists, the only distinctions occur in gospel music.
Right.
You know, when it comes to something that is contemporary, or when it comes to traditional or standard. And so I think that hip hop, being the youngest of all of the genres since, jazz, I want to say, that are still around at this point, I think that it deserves that distinction of saying, there's a rap standard. There's a standard rap, and then there's contemporary rap. And I think that if a 16-year-old wants to make standard rap, he should be allowed to make that style of hip hop without automatically being ostracized
or
based on age.
Right.
Like that's the, like, you know, old school hip hop is probably the hip hop that we associate with the 80s and early 90s, right? That's what we consider old school because that's when it began. Mm-hmm. To a 16-year-old today, Nelly is old school. You understand what I'm saying? So there has to be some preservation of what we all revere as old school from the 80s and early 90s. And then there needs to be a broader classification of standard rap that has some of the cadences of the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s before things evolved into more of a trap sound, and then you're getting into the subgenres. So there just needs to be something called rap standard that allows everyone to make something that has a certain cadence without it automatically being dismissed as old school.
Right. Or it sounds dated or something like that.
Yeah.
I have a question, kind of off subject, but you don't, I mean, generally, do you feel like you take any of your musical cues or fashion cues or life cues, I guess, but specifically, I guess, with style, musical style and personal style from other people or from the ether, like the universe? Like, how do you, what do you decide something is cool and you want to, or you're willing to try that or go that direction? Or when do you just realize it's seeped in? Because like there's certain, you know, how personal style evolves kind of without us realizing it sometimes.
Yeah, personal style, I think I have a bit more leeway with than, excuse my dog, it's going crazy for some reason. Personal style, I have a bit more leeway with. I look at, you know, I mean, my style of dress, I want to say, I take cues from everybody from Nick Booster to Lenny Kravitz to Chris Paul. You know, and, you know, it's a combination of all of those different people and people who have a lifestyle that is truly, you know, authentic. I think musically, I started really taking rap seriously when I was in the 9th grade. And I want to say that was 1992, 1993. And nothing has really changed about my vocabulary that I use or the cadence that I use. It was at that same time that I started listening to more Tribe Called Quest, De La, and then in 96 or 95, 96, when I was in high school, I was completely blown away with the vocabulary and the wit of Jay-Z. And I added some of the audacious boldness and a little bit of the cockiness to what I was already saying. So I was saying it, but I was still kind of saying it timidly. And I think I looked at him as a person, right? I've always been skinny. I looked at him and I'm like, if this dude can say it like this, mean,
put some weight
then so can I. You know what I'm saying? So that's really the main thing that I want to say. I really was inspired by Jay was really the audacity and, you know, ending those punchlines with some balls, you know what I'm saying, as opposed to just saying it like, huh? You know what I'm saying? It was like,
how I feel. How do you feel?
right.
You know what? Speaking of styles, marriage and styles of marriage are all the rage these last couple of days, thanks to Will and Jada. They're throwing a huge spotlight on different kinds of marriage, which I don't think, it looks like it's a conversation that most people aren't ready for. There's so much judgment.
To consider something. It takes some maturity to consider something that doesn't strike you as normal or okay. It takes, you know what I mean? Just like people that haven't been around other cultures of people. Initially, and then you're like, okay, let me listen. You have to be a little bit mature to listen.
Right. And Will and Jada are definitely talking a few levels above plenty of people's pay grades, and I see tons of people interjecting. First of all, I'm keeping quiet because I'm not married. That's the only reason I'm shutting up. I have plenty of my own experiences. I know plenty of people whose marriage falls outside of the traditional, which I think we both do. Yeah, but I think all of us do. But at the same time, I see married people interjecting, it couldn't be me, and that's just weird, and it's freaky, and it's this, and it's that, and I got a divorce, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah, but you're just telling us why it couldn't have been you. You could have just left it there like that. That's fine. It could have been me. Got it. Great. I'm afraid of heights. I see you going in a helicopter. Couldn't be me. And I'm happy there. I'm not trying to talk you out of taking the helicopter trip. I'm just explaining why. All I need to do is stay on the ground. Because I don't see you threatened in that way. I don't see you flexing that level of insecurity when someone else's different kind of marriage comes across the table.
Yeah.
Why do you think married people feel the need to address a different kind of marriage? Even why single people are doing it?
I think it lends to people who got married for love versus people who got married for everyone around them. You know, I didn't finish college, but I do recall that there was some, you know, women who were seniors that I was trying to holler at as a freshman. And, you know, their thing was, you know, my parents have been married for 40 years and I'm looking for a husband, you know, or they had their whole projection of what their life was supposed to be before they got to the age of 30. And so for those people, and that's no knock, especially those who may have grown up in a church home and, you know, everything is supposed to be what they believe is according to biblical covenant, all of that. I think the people with the most to say are the people who have an idea of what marriage is, and what Will and Jada have experienced falls so far out of what that's about. And I think that a lot of people view marriage as this very selfish, and I call it selfish because it's just like you're mine. We have to be one. And you know, how dare you find that other person attractive? If you know, and it screams insecure. It screams a lot. And I think that people who have not been married or have not lived with someone for a long period of time, it just doesn't feel like that's what you think it's supposed to be.
I was going to compare it to, go ahead.
For me, the reason why I haven't made any acknowledgement about it or anything like that is because all we have is a leak of mess, right? Like we don't really know what isn't messy about Will's end, right? We don't know what or who was before or after August.
Right.
So
they've had a long relationship, and this isn't a new reality for them that they've apparently been outside of a lot of people's expectations of marriage.
Right. So if they've done the work to live with it or done the work to arrange it, what concern of it, you know, what concern is it of mine? Like it's not really changing my day. It's not putting any money in my pocket. It's not helping me feed my daughter, you know. So I just think that you know, I joke with my wife all the time because, you know, she thinks Michael B. Jordan is attractive, and rightfully so. He's a handsome guy, right? So when I was in the airport in Chicago, and there was a huge billboard of him, you know, in the terminal, and so you know, I sent her a selfie with the middle finger, you know what I'm saying? And it was just like, you know, am I hating? Do I think that it's impossible for her to be attracted to somebody else? No. At the same time, it's just like, well, for me, I'm the type of person that I believe that if, you know, someone's going to stray away from what you've established as the norm in your relationship, then that's really what they wanted to do. You know what I'm saying? And then it's going to be up to you to figure out, well, so what does this mean? Does this mean that we end? Does this mean that we go on? Does it mean that I get a turn? What does all of that mean? But it's just, I don't know. People have this idea of ownership that I think is just a little flawed. It's a little dated. And when you look at somebody as goals, and they do something that doesn't fit what you peg them for, people become hurt by it. And that's what happens when, you know, you're a celebrity.
I compare it to a lot of some body shaming type stuff. When people, we're at this, you know, super acceptance. We're trying to be super accepting of bigger bodies, of softer bodies, of different skin textures and bodies. I mean, even embracing dad bod, whatever that is, like, and all of a sudden, then if you are working really hard, I looked out the window, I missed it, damn it. If all of a sudden, then it's like, even saying something about fitness goals is almost anti-accepting yourself.
Yeah.
If I start talking about, I want to, you know, tighten up and lose a couple pounds, quarantine's been rough for me, people are like, what are you talking about? You're the 1%, or you're like, what are you judging? Are you saying if you need to lose a couple pounds, well, what about this girl? Are you saying she's fat? And it's like, Jesus, you're comparing different situations, like different marriages. Like, just because somebody chooses to do something a different way or hold different standards. Like if one marriage equals, we tell each other everywhere we go, we check in when we get to the hotel, we do this, like, some people are much more lax or much more trusting or free-spirited about their stuff. Some women go to dinner with their male friends. Some women, that's kind of a no-no. Like, why are you on the phone with a woman late at night? It's my friend. Like, what is that? Those definitions are within a 2-person or however many person relationship. And we just get so scared that it's going to affect ours. I think that's what it is. That's my
I only saw one thing wrong with the entire, and wrong. I only see one real issue with the entire Will and Jada thing, and it's just one. Yeah, well, I mean, you know what? I'm gonna keep it 1,000 with you. I'm not really even necessarily mad at him because he's not the first side chick to get messy, and he won't be the last one.
I guess.
Like, it wasn't cool, and I'm sure it was a betrayal of trust on a bunch of different levels, especially if Will gave you his blessing to proceed, and then for you to air everything out like that. That rule one is what happens.
That was one of the stipulations.
Right.
Like,
rule one, what happens in a couple stays in a couple. Right. It should stay here. But I'll tell you the real issue that I see, and this is light, but not really light, but I'll tell you the real one. If this was any other situation where somebody in their late 40s with a world of experience and knowledge took advantage of a young, hot, sexy sex symbol who was emotionally and mentally unstable and turned them out to the point where that person fell in love with them. Not to mention the fact that they were introduced to this person by their own kid. Like, if it was any other situation, if a man had met the friend of his daughter, she was mentally unstable and going through a bunch of stuff, took advantage of all of that with all this knowledge in his head, slept with her, turned her out, then eventually deaded her, goes back to his main spouse, explains it away by calling it an entanglement, and even going so far as to insinuate that what they did for the side piece was healing for them. After the side piece tells all the business because it was too much for them to keep on them. Like, we'd be calling that creepy, we'd be calling it pervy, we'd be calling it grooming. Like, for me, I think about how many dudes I get on when I see them with a chick young enough to be their child, or your child,
or manipulating young women.
Right, your child's big homie. That's another word we might use, manipulating. Like, all of these things strike me as like super creepy when I think about a guy doing it. Like, R. Kelly has that in his background. I'm not saying Jada is R. Kelly by any means, but if you start thinking about the women that the girls that he was seen with,
we talk about the power imbalance. She had the power
like
imbalance.
A lot of them were of age for that state. You know what I mean? Like, they weren't considered minors for that state. Age of consent is different for every state. So most of what me and men like me were getting on R. Kelly about wasn't for something that was illegal. It was immoral. It was wrong. We were getting at him because what you did was so creepy and so slimeball, taking advantage of this little girl. And then I look at what Jada's doing, and it kind of feels like the same thing. Like, that's my only issue, is that you went and it looked like you took advantage of this dude who was not quite right and not quite stable emotionally. And now that it's all said and done and you deaded him and went back to your spouse, you called it an entanglement and even implied that you were healing him when he's obviously not over it.
I would argue, in a tiny small point, that we expect somebody with a lot of experience to not have their own weaknesses. And I think that she was pretty in a pretty bad place too.
That's
I think that
never an excuse for the men.
No, I'm saying two damaged people do tend to find each other.
Yeah, but no one cares about that when the guys do it. If a guy tells you he's going through a rough marriage or is sexless or he's being abused by, like, no one ever wants
they
to
always
hear,
go for a young woman during a
right. But no one ever cares about a man. You like, and this is, again, I'm not really trying to place any blame, but I'm just pointing out the hypocrisy of it all, because a midlife crisis for most humans, not just men, but for most humans, is a real serious thing. In men, we're talking about a guy who realizes that in a midlife crisis, he's telling himself, or people, society has told him, and now he's agreeing, that his better years are behind him. He's never going to be that person that he wanted to be. He's trying desperately to reclaim some part of that. And none of us have any sympathy for that whatsoever. Like, he looks at his body, doesn't recognize it, it's not responding the same way. And granted, we all go through that, but he's never going to make the money he wanted to make. He's never going to be the guy he wanted to be. He's never going to have the life he wanted to have. And no one has any sympathy for that whatsoever when he makes a decision that reinvigorates his youth by going to get with this chick
buying a dumb car, getting with
buying a stupid car, wearing stupid clothes, going after young girls who he can take advantage of, which is the main thing. You're taking advantage of that girl. I'm looking at Jada and I'm like, you're taking advantage of this dude, plain and simple. Regardless of who's cool with it, you're taking advantage of him, and everybody just seems to be overlooking that part. And for me, knowing that I've accepted that men mature slower than women, it just feels super creepy to me.
Yeah, I share the same sentiment without the take advantage part. What I believe is that they probably, she probably chose him, like that little pool boy nigga right there, right? I want him. Honey, can I have that one? Can I just play with him? He was like, all right, that cool. And I think she hoped and believed that as a young entertainer, a young R&B singer who was touring the country and doing whatever he wanted to do, that he would have been happy to have the fun and move on.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
He didn't take into account his real mental or physical or status.
I think that's what happened, which is why the term entanglement seems so. You don't purposely put your foot in an entanglement; you find yourself there. So I think that, you know, it does not excuse the end result, which is what happens when it is men who, you know, like if it was Denzel Washington doing this,
right,
everyone would be kind of judging if they need to cancel him. Right. They'd be so hurt. He
knew
appalled.
better. Right.
They'd be appalled. And so I think, you know, I shared the sentiment that no one looked at Jada that way. No one, the hypocrisy of no one saying that what she did was not morally correct.
They're looking at it from a marriage part.
They're looking at it strictly from the marriage part. And I think that what happens a lot of time in gossip culture is that since women are the ones who kind of drive those conversations, there's an unstated thing that women know, right? And it's all within them. And when a woman says something, another woman can pick up on it without men being aware. And I think what happens is in that kind of gossip market, you know, we ain't gonna talk about that right now. We just gonna make fun of it and, you know, talk about the marriage and post memes of Will. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, it's like
things that we're uncomfortable with. That's
it's like talking about, there are people who say, you know, talk about toxic masculinity all the time, right? And so much so that people are not aware that the term masculinity doesn't always have toxic before it. They believe that that's the thing. It's called toxic masculinity, right? But then there are unfit mothers that we don't talk about, right? There are people who are not the best moms. Like being a mother doesn't make you a good mom, right? Just because you actually gave birth to a child. But
there's toxic femininity.
That's not a big topic. No one wants to talk about that. So what I'm saying is in this particular situation, when it comes to Black women and the space of marriage, I don't think we're going to get that conversation, because typically in marriage, men have been the one to, you know, sully it. You know what I'm saying? So they're just going to skip over that. But I don't think she took advantage, like, you know, tried to drag it out and turn it into this emotional thing. I think he probably felt that as
she's pretty incredible.
The taboo of it. The taboo of it is like, oh my gosh, I love this. You know what I'm saying?
No,
so
we only disagree on one point. I don't think that she did that on purpose. I think she didn't care. The same way that most dudes who go get them a 20-something-year-old jump off, they don't care.
Like it was irresponsible, not evil.
Right. I don't think she went into it with these evil intentions to turn him out and mess his brain up and have him fall for her. But I also don't think that she cared, especially since a lot of his trials and tribulations were pretty public at the time that they got together. It's not like, you know, he was some dude who wasn't being reported on. Everyone kind of knew what he was going through between the sickness and the street stuff, like health issues rather, and the street stuff. We all knew he was weighed on mentally, and she went on full-on vacations with this dude. So I think she knew. I just don't think she really cared which
Yeah,
is
yeah.
pretty typical of what guys do. When dudes do it,
Yeah.
they don't care about the 20-something they get, and after it's
Wealth and
over, it's
fame.
over.
Wealth
Yeah.
and fame can make you feel like batteries in your back is also the same thing as big balls. Like,
Yeah.
I think you can get some women can have some toxic masculinity. I think that women can have
Toxic
that.
femininity. Let's
Well, but
call
I'm
it.
saying,
Let's
okay,
switch it.
yeah, can have some toxic behavior. How about
There
that?
you go.
I think that a lot of fame and wealth and power can do that. Can what's the word? Not convert. Can corrupt. That's all. But we are running out of time. I don't want us to go too far and have to explain to our station why
we have to let the world's coolest dad go. Classic. My friend, love you, miss you. Please
Love
tell
you
everybody.
too, man.
Please tell everybody where they can find all of your stuff.
Oh man, at this point, man, just Mr. Chris Classic will a quick Google search will kind of get you everything. That's my tag on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, which I don't use much, but I'm there.
I like the new hairstyle, by the way. I want to throw that out there.
Thank you, man. I'm working on locking it up, man.
Yeah, he's catching. He'll catch.
Yeah, it's in about 15 years.
I grew the hawk back. Yeah, we did some changes over this quarantine team.
Yeah, but we're all making it look good. Classic,
Word.
thank you so much for being here. You and I still
Thank
have
y'all.
to talk music, my friend. I haven't forgotten any of that stuff we were talking about before. As soon as we stabilize a little bit, let's roll back into that. In the meantime, I'm your man, Mr. Mac.
And I'm Crystal Levin.
This has been the M+M+M show, aka the show. May you live as long as you want and never want as long as you live. Do us a favor, go get laid. Peace.
Responsibly. Bye.